The time is now 2 p.m. Hearing Chair Elver Silva, would you please begin the hearing?
Indeed. Thank you, my dear. Good afternoon and welcome to the U.S. Access Board's Artificial Intelligence Virtual Hearing for the Disability Community. My name is Elver Ariza Silva. I am a public member of the Access Board, appointed by President Biden in 2022. I serve as the Vice Chair of the Board and I live here in the Washington, D.C. area. The Access Board's mission is to create access for all. The Access Board is an independent federal agency dedicated to accessible design for people with disabilities. The board is comprised of 25 individuals, 13 of whom, like me, are appointed by the president, and the other 12 are representatives from various federal departments. I would like to acknowledge my fellow board members that have joined today's hearing and thank them for being here today. I would like to take a moment on behalf of the board to additionally thank all of today's presenters and those in attendance for being with us today as we discuss artificial intelligence in relation to the disability community. A few housekeeping notes as we begin. This hearing is being recorded. American Sign Language interpretation and real-time captions are being provided. The hearing will be posted to our website and YouTube channel in the coming days. All attendees will remain muted and with your cameras off unless you are being called upon to speak. You may use the chat feature to the host if you need assistance. For all board members, presenters, and those that will register to offer public comments, please take the time now to ensure that the name you are listed on Zoom is your full name so that we can easily identify you and provide you with the permissions needed to speak at the hearing. On the screen, you will find the agenda for today's hearing. After my welcoming remarks, we will begin the hearing with Allison Levy, Director of the Office of Technical and Information Services for the Access Board, who will provide some foundational background on our artificial intelligence AI work in the executive order on artificial intelligence. After Allison, we will hear from a wide range of presenters from federal agencies as well as industry practitioners on AI and accessibility. Following the presentations, Access Board members and staff will be able to ask panelists questions. Afterwards, there will be a time for public comments from those that have pre-registered to provide public comments. Let us begin by welcoming Allison Levy. Allison?
Thank you, Elver. Good afternoon. I'm happy to share some background information with you, starting with the next slide. For those of you who are not familiar yet with the U.S. Access Board, we have basically three primary roles and responsibilities. First, to establish accessible design guidelines and standards under the Architectural Barriers Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act, in addition to Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act, among others. Second, we provide technical assistance and training on all aspects of accessibility for both the built environment and the digital environment. And third, we enforce the Architectural Barriers Act, which applies to the federal government buildings. Next slide. So back last October of 2023, President Biden issued an executive order on artificial intelligence. Within that executive order, the Access Board was tasked with a few things to help with accessibility of artificial intelligence. Next slide, please. So our three tasks include the following. First, we were asked to solicit public participation and conduct community engagement to learn a little bit more about what folks are feeling and experiencing about their use of artificial intelligence. Second, we've been asked to issue technical assistance and recommendations on the risks and benefits of AI, including use of biometrics as a data input. And third, we're working to help provide people with disabilities access to information and communication technology, as well as transportation services. Next slide, please. To help us with this endeavor, we partnered with two national nonprofit disability organizations. They are amazing and they're great team players as we move forward in our communication with the disability community, AI practitioners, as well as other federal agencies. Those two organizations are the Center for Democracy and Technology and the American Association of People with Disabilities, otherwise known as AAPD. We engaged in this Memorandum of Understanding, otherwise known as an MOU, back in May to really help us connect with the disability community. Next slide, please. One of the key outcomes of this partnership is that we're working through a series of 5 web-based iterations that include hearings. The first was hosted on July 9th of this year, specifically to the disability community. And actually, the first one is not listed here. The first one was a level setting. It was basic information about AI to help people with disabilities better understand AI and to level set a basic understanding of this technology. The second one was 2 iterations with the disability community. We hosted a morning and an afternoon session on July 9th. Next, we're hosting today's session for AI practitioners and federal agencies to share what they know about best practices, pros and cons of artificial intelligence. And finally, our goal is to host our last iteration in November to share our findings, recommendations on the use of AI and accessibility for people with disabilities. To look for or to view any of the previous sessions, please visit our new U.S. Access Board Artificial Intelligence webpage. The link is provided on this slide. We'll also pop it in the chat box. But if you visit our homepage, just look for the link to our AI hearing information, and you'll find a wealth of resources there that will continue to evolve as we move forward with this effort. Now I'll turn things back over to Elver to introduce our next panelist. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to continuing to support you in this endeavor.
Thank you, Alison, for that foundational information. We will now transition to the panel's presentations part of the hearing. Panelists will be sharing federal and perspectives on AI and touch on current research, current work on AI and other related AI topics. We ask that all panelists their presentation to around 8 minutes, and if they have, should be prepared to share their screen at the time of their introduction. As a reminder, please keep your cameras off until it's your time to present. We ask that all others remain muted with cameras off. First presentation. We now welcome Zach Whitman, Chief of AI Officer of the General Service Administration, GSA, on GSA's approaches to AI and accessibility. Zach, you may begin.
Thank you, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me and see me okay. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone this afternoon, especially regarding GSA's consideration of AI and how that intersects with our accessibility practices. One convenient thing about my role as Chief AI Officer is that I'm also the Chief Data Officer, and in that structure at GSA, we run the Accessibility for 508 program. And so we're closely involved in how we can best leverage latest technologies to improve an accessible future, not only for our public services, but also for our internal team as well. We're really committed to this, and having that synergy between the technology and the 508 office has been a really uh, beneficial relationship that we've been able to bridge. Now, as we look at AI and its potential future, we see this as a transformative technology for some of the solutions that previously may have been a little difficult or prohibitive in our ability to offer. We're seeing a democratization of these services uh, with these general services and applying them to different applications uh, in the work context, but also in our public servicing offerings, uh, opens up a wide aperture of potential for us. And so we see this opportunity, one with excitement, but also one with caution. We don't want to rush into anything too quickly. We want to make sure that the advancements that we're making are truly making forward progress and not doing any kind of disservices as we roll out this new technology, given its relative infancy. Some of the things that we're looking at specifically at GSA are things like real-time captioning and transcription services. We know that AI-driven tools that are currently commercially available can do real-time captioning for videos or meetings and live events. But we also know that some of these things don't have the accuracy that would be required for our workplace or to offer to the public. And so taking a measured approach in how we evaluate those services is really critical. Second would be like an AI-powered screen reader. Again, this is a new possibility for us to be able to not only offer more context around the presentation on the screen, but also provide insight as to graphical information. We see examples of how AI can start to interpret graphics in more meaningful ways than simply representing that this is a specific type of graphic, but what that graphic means. And that again is an opportunity for us to start to lean into this technology and provide a richer experience. We're also looking at automated image and video descriptions. Now, this again is going into how we are going to provide better services for either our video presentations or our more static assets that need to be enriched at scale. We have a lot of digital infrastructure that needs to be looked at in certain contexts to ensure that the images are properly vetted and categorized in a way that is truly accessible. And so this is another efficiency that we could potentially see that would improve the quality of services. We're also making sure that we are considering what it would mean to have predictive text or AI-based writing support be made available to our workforce. We understand that a lot of folks can have challenges in writing without having significant cognitive load or motor disabilities that are making it harder to create or to author text. And we wanted to make sure that the predictive text and AI writing support can be a value add to those services. Now, when we talk about the AI that is currently available, and there are a number of different applications that we can keep going into, but I think one thing I wanted to call out is that we believe that AI needs to be, the AI with regards to accessibility needs to be opinionated. And what I mean by that is oftentimes we see standards like WCAG trying to outline some, three basic ideas. First one would be what is the issue that it's observing, where the issue is, and then how do you fix the issue? Now, when we're talking about things like HTML, it's critical that we identify these problems, and AI can be a service in identifying issues, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we have a prescriptive answer as to how best to solve the issue. And that's what I mean by the opinionated concepts need to be present in our AI solutions that are going to be supporting in terms of writing, specifically code in this context. Sometimes the solution might not be quite so obvious as to how to fix the problem to an AI assistant who can identify where the issue might be, but might not understand how best to solve that issue. This is one of the biggest shortcomings we see with accessibility testing tools. The fact that they mostly do a good job of finding these issues, but the exact code is sometimes requires some subjectivity to ensure that the quality of that solution is meeting the needs of the public. A good example would be these publicly available LLMs. They are largely populated and trained on publicly available data, public websites. Now, one thing that we have all come to understand is that the data that's used to train these models is public and therefore has a lack of curation potential. And so we don't necessarily ingest into the systems the absolute best solutions for accessible websites, as an example. We want to make sure that GSA plays a role in improving the corpus of data that these public LLMs are training on by providing high quality, accessible solution and code so that the better results could be made available through these general tools. I believe that the government should be a source of delivering high quality, accessible content through our websites. And so that's one of our main focuses going forward, is making sure that we are doing everything we can to improve the quality of our digital experiences. Now, some of the things that we're currently exploring are we're using AI to convert PDF holdings into HTML. This is a big movement. We have a lot of PDFs that are currently on gsa.gov that we'd like to convert into accessible formats. And that will take a series of those different products and capabilities that I talked about a little bit earlier to do effectively. Not only that, though, we want to make sure that the quality is increasing as we deliver these services. And so not only do we have the technology piece of it, but also the process improvements that we're going to be putting into place to ensure that there is quality assurance in the outcome and the output of these automated systems. We're also investigating the potential for AI meeting transcription services and document summarization. These are, again, in the early days because we want to make a very deliberate decision as to how we move forward and not move too quickly and potentially impart some biases, which we will have constrained without proper testing. So we're taking a very slow approach to this. And then lastly, we're looking at AI visual interpretation tooling. This would be for like graphical interfaces that have charts and maps where an interpretation layer on top of the visual representation would be assistive in trying to make sense of what the document is trying to say. Also, we're trying alternative routes to gather better ideas or new ideas. We recently hosted a GSA hackathon, which had several accessibility submissions specific to AI that were used to assist folks in trying to either understand content that was on federal websites or to make better submissions or make forms more accessible. In fact, the second place winner of that hackathon was one that took jargon language that was hosted on federal websites and made it into clear, plain language through an AI interpreter. So we're really happy to see new ideas coming forward on that front. And lastly, I'll close with we're making heavy investments into the US web design system in terms of making sure that any new advancements we make, especially in the domain of AI, in the sense of AI interfaces that are specific to web, are accessible. And I'll also call out an upcoming accessibility forum hosted by Archive that's hosted in a couple of days, actually in September. That's going to be dealing with specifically AI and accessibility, which I think is a really exciting event that will be hosted by Archive out of Cornell. Anyway, that's my time. I really appreciate everyone's attention, and please let me know if you have any further questions and follow up. Thanks.
Thank you so very much, Zach. In our second presentation, we will welcome Megan Schuler, Legal Director of the Bazelon Center for Mental Health Law, on the promises and perils of AI for people with mental health disabilities. Megan, may begin, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Megan Schuler. I'm the legal director of the Bazelon Center for Mental Health Law. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a white woman in my 40s with mostly blonde hair, wearing a dark green shirt and gold necklace. I'm coming to you from Acadia National Park, home of the Wabanaki Nation. Thank you to the Access Board, CDT, and AAPD for the opportunity to speak to you all today about the impact of AI on people with mental health disabilities, including both the promise and the perils. The Bazelon Center for Mental Health Law has been fighting for over 50 years to protect and advance the civil rights of adults and children with mental health and developmental disabilities, and the right to live with autonomy, dignity, and opportunity in welcoming communities supported by law, policy, and practices. As mentioned, my focus today is to speak on the impact of AI on people with mental health conditions in particular, including serious mental illness, which is an often overlooked population in the growing discussions of AI policy and regulation. AI, using that term broadly, is now being used for very high stakes decision making, from who gets a job or a loan or held in jail or keeps custody of their child, often with the stated purpose of reducing systemic and unconscious bias. Whatever you feel about it, AI is impacting everything we do and is not going away. It's growing and expanding, and absent standards and regulations, so is AI bias and what our partners at CDT call technology-facilitated discrimination. Now, to make this concrete, I want to talk about pretrial sentencing tools. Courts are now routinely using predictive algorithms to make decisions in courtrooms. Algorithms use pools of information to turn data points into predictions, whether that's for online shopping, hiring workers, or to make bail decisions at the point of arrest. One such popular and widespread pretrial sentencing tool gets information from the arrestee, feeds it into a computer algorithm, and that outputs a risk score meant to quantify the likelihood that the person will commit a crime or fail to appear in court. High risk equals jail, and low risk equals bail. A widely read ProPublica report on one such popular tool found significant racial bias. It inaccurately predicted that 45% of Black arrestees would reoffend who did not, while the false positive rate for white arrestees was less than 24%. In addition to the horrifying racial bias, note how inaccurate the tool is for everyone on a decision that decides who gets incarcerated. Yet these tools are still widely used. Now, to unpack why software that does not know the race of the person would produce such discriminatory and biased results, we should start by looking at the software and how it works. But the courts and judges using these tools generally do not have access to how the software is making its predictions or what the score is based on, because the company that created the tool claims it's proprietary. Think about the due process and constitutional implications of that. Now, despite this black box problem, we do know the answer to the question of why. The answer is proxies. The tools rely on numerous proxies for race that reflect the societal disparities and institutional racism all around us, and then not only replicate that racism, they increase it. We see similar biases and proxies in the criminal legal system across race and disability. A review of a few key numbers helps explain why. By one report, people with disabilities account for 30 to 50% of incidents of police use of force. Federal government estimates have found that people in need of mental health support are 20 to 50% of the people shot and killed by police. Black Americans are over 3 times as likely as white Americans to be killed by police. And one study found that Black people with mental health disabilities were more likely to be incarcerated than any other racial group. Now consider a pretrial sentencing tool that calculates your risk of reoffending or fleeing based on factors such as your age at first arrest and prior misdemeanor convictions. Those are going to disproportionately identify Black people and people with disabilities as high risk. The same is true of other factors used in these tools due to well-documented disparities and biases, both racial and disability-based, in employment and housing. Now, the child welfare context provides another concrete example of the risks of these predictive decision-making algorithms for people with disabilities. Many child welfare agencies in the United States are considering using these tools to screen reports of neglect and make child custody and placement determinations. In fact, several are already using them. The Allegheny Family Screening Tool, used in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and surrounding areas, was specifically designed to predict who is likely to have their child removed from their custody in the next 2 years. Well, based on historical data, the correct answer is BIPOC parents and parents with disabilities, not because their children are at greater risk of abuse or neglect, but because of racial disparities and well-documented biases against parents with disabilities in the child welfare system. So by identifying these groups, the software is working correctly. That's the right answer to the question. And now the tool is going to identify all people in those categories as high risk and increase the likelihood that they'll have their children taken away from them. The problem begins with the question asked. Why are we not asking which children are at greatest risk of abuse and neglect? Well, because the algorithm cannot predict that, and yet it's still being used. Now, to answer the question presented to it of who's going to have their children taken from them, the algorithm has used a trove of detailed personal data collected from child welfare history, birth, Medicaid, substance use, mental health, jail, and probation records, among other government data sets. This tool has all the same proxy problems as the pretrial sentencing tools. But this tool also has expressly included the fact of having a mental health diagnosis as a risk factor, grouping together a wide range of mental health conditions with no individualized analysis. It also includes the fact of treatment for mental health as another risk factor, and the same for a past history of substance use and treatment. Treatment is specifically held against you. Based on one ACLU report on this tool, your risk score can increase by 3 full points on a scale of 1 to 20, based on the overt disability factors alone. Never mind all the proxies. Now, the Americans with Disabilities Act requires that decisions be individualized. It requires that people with disabilities be given an equal opportunity to obtain the same result, gain the same benefit, or achieve the same level of achievement as provided to others. And it prohibits using criteria that tend to screen out people with disabilities, or methods of administering a program that result in discrimination. Now consider how the algorithms we just discussed comport with these requirements. And to be clear, there is no exception in the ADA or other civil rights laws for AI. So this brings me back to where we started. Many of the tools discussed have been held up as a way to reduce human bias and disparities in public systems wrought with bias and discrimination. If AI is not going anywhere, how do we address and reduce the perils while also pursuing and realizing their promise? Some of the tools that pose the greatest threat also present the greatest promise. What if we could actually use them to reduce bias and discrimination in the criminal legal system, in the child welfare system, and in public benefits? We must first understand the very real impact of these tools, stop them from being used behind a curtain and with impunity to strip BIPOC and disabled communities of their rights, and then ensure the people most impacted are involved in developing and implementing these tools and solutions if we are truly to use AI for good. To be clear, this is not a context where we should be moving fast and break things. Those things are people's lives and their families. But if an algorithm was carefully and thoughtfully developed, deployed and implemented by and with impacted communities, Black and Brown communities, people with disabilities, LGBTQI+ communities, to actually reduce bias in these high-stakes systems, that is a world worth imagining. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you so much, Megan. Our third presentation, we are going to hear from Nathan Cunningham, Senior Policy Advisor of the Office of Disability Employment Policy within the U.S. Department of Labor and Federal Project Manager of the Partnership on Employment and Accessible Technology, PEAT. Nathan, you may begin, please.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone from Seattle, Washington. My name is Nathan Cunningham. I am a white man in my early 30s wearing a blue plaid shirt and a blazer, and I use he, him pronouns. It's a pleasure to give remarks today at the U.S. Access Board hearing on behalf of the U.S. Department of Labor. I am a senior policy advisor in the department's Office of Disability Employment Policy, or ODEP. Our Assistant Secretary, Taryn Williams, is the head of my agency and a federal member of the U.S. Access Board. And through our collaboration, our agencies are able to advance our shared mission to promote equity and access for people with disabilities. So thank you for inviting me and for all the panelists' remarks today. I also want to say I really appreciated the wealth of knowledge that disability advocates shared during the hearings on August 8th. Definitely learned a lot. I have low vision, and I believe it's necessary for those of us with disabilities to make sure that new technologies work for us as well. And so I'm glad that these voices are involved in the hearings. AI is a prime example of this. So my agency, ODEP, influences federal and state policies to make AI fair and inclusive in the context of employment. We create resources for employers, AI experts, and workers to learn how to use AI in inclusive ways. And we look at AI from two main perspectives. So first, as the previous panelists described, AI holds extraordinary promise and potential, and in our case, for improving opportunity and access for workers. It can even enhance accessibility and support reasonable accommodations. Think of applications like computer vision or meeting transcription, as one of the panelists discussed. However, there's a second part of this angle. So depending on how people develop and use AI, this technology runs the risk of undermining labor rights and causing bias and discrimination against disabled job seekers and workers. At the Department of Labor, we are committed to empowering our nation's job seekers and workers. So protecting worker rights and well-being helps make employment safer, healthier, and more inclusive. These goals are critical during a time of rapid innovation in the case of AI, when advanced technologies are reshaping how people work. Earlier this year, the Department of Labor released a set of principles for developers and employers to promote worker well-being when they use AI. These principles offer a North Star for inclusive AI governance. And here with the Access Board, we know from the world of accessibility that robust government governance efforts are critical to help people follow policies like Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act. And I will say we need similar guidance to help people understand and follow inclusive AI practices. So a similar standard that lays out people's responsibilities to enact inclusive AI policies at an organization, whether from an employer side, vendor side, or even worker rights. New tools powered by AI are in the spotlight because they can impact so many aspects of work. AI can help people carry out job tasks, take meeting notes, provide chatbot services, process large data sets, scan applicant resumes, and even match people to jobs. Many of us are encountering AI all the time without realizing it. And that's part of the problem here. Many of us have talked about transparency as a key issue. Transparency is one of the central pillars of inclusive AI governance. So job seekers and workers need to know when AI is present, how it affects them, what accommodations they can request, and even how they can opt out. Being able to call in a real person or a human for oversight and assistance is not a separate function. This is a key element of inclusive AI systems. Yeah, AI is technical, but it is also very social. People build AI systems and people decide how to use them. Unfortunately, the people most at risk from these systems are often left out of the conversation, but not today. At ODEP, we address this issue head on. Our mission is to develop and influence policies and practices that increase the number and quality of employment opportunities for people with disabilities. AI is one issue that crosses many of our policy areas, from education to employment to workforce training. Through this work, we fund an initiative called the Partnership on Employment and Accessible Technology, or PEAT, P-E-A-T. Pete works toward a future where all technology is born accessible so that disabled workers can succeed in their careers. And for many years, Pete has influenced accessibility policies and practices for traditional forms of technology, such as computers and websites. As technology evolves, we have also created resources that give employers practical guidance on disability inclusion when they choose to adopt AI. These resources guide employers through each step of choosing inclusive technology, implementing it, and training staff on best practices. To create more useful and robust materials, we collaborate and partner with a range of policymakers, disability advocacy organizations, technology companies, employers, AI experts, and researchers. The AI and Disability Inclusion Toolkit, which is found on our website. And it lays out for employers steps they can follow if they're interested in using AI in recruitment and hiring. This is one of the biggest use cases that we're seeing in the employment context right now, and one that is deemed higher risk generally. And it's tricky because according to data from the Society for Human Resource Management, I think 92% of employers are procuring these AI tools from vendors. So there may be a lack of understanding about how the tool functions, what its risks are, especially to disabled workers. So there are responsibilities that we're laying out for employers to ask the right questions, to put in place the right governance practices, so that these tools are not discriminating. Because as the previous panelist said, the presence of AI does not negate employers' responsibilities to non-discrimination. We have also put out resources on the promise of AI. So there are some disability-led startups that are using AI in exciting and innovative ways to match people with disabilities to jobs, to train people with disabilities to fill in-demand jobs. And we have this research on our website as well. In 2023, we also put out a series of articles on how automated surveillance can create barriers to workers with disabilities. So moving out of the hiring and recruitment context, looking at the issues with ability-based monitoring of workers to inform productivity, advancement decisions, and even termination. There are many accessibility challenges with these automated tools that employers should be mindful of. We are also working on new policy resources with federal partners overseeing AI risk management. These upcoming materials will guide employers that use AI tools in recruitment and hiring to follow concrete steps to maximize the benefits of this technology and better manage risks. And this will be a much more robust policy resource that we're aiming to launch this fall. Ultimately, employers can use AI to reduce bias and even open the virtual door to recruit more workers with and without disabilities. Disability-led startups are leveraging AI to advance inclusive hiring, and major hiring platforms are advancing inclusive strategies in their own networks. To learn more about our resources, I encourage you to visit our website at www.peatworks.org. In closing, I want to reiterate that we all have a duty to decide when and how to use new technology. All uses of AI are not inevitable. Many are good. Some require more attention. I hope the work I shared today can help us think through how to address the benefits and risks of AI for disabled people. I want to thank the American Association of People with Disabilities and the Center for Democracy and Technology for their partnership with the Access Board on this issue, and I look forward to hearing from the rest of the panelists.
Thank you so very much, Nathan. Now for our fourth presentation, we will welcome Zara DeCos, Assistant Legal Counsel of the ADA and GINA Division within the Office of Legal Counsel and the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Sarah, you may begin, please.
Thank you so much. Let me just share my screen. All right, so Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Sarah Decaz. I'm a disability attorney with the Office of Legal Counsel at the EEOC. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a white woman wearing a blue scarf and a blue sweater. I'm going to address AI and other algorithmic decision-making tools and employment for people with disabilities. And I'm delighted to follow on Nathan's presentation, which is very apt in terms of what I'm going to be discussing. I'm going to go into a little more detail about just how the ADA raises concerns about the use of AI in the workplace. So first, I just want to discuss a few of the types of tools that we're seeing. There are many, and they are moving into the workplace rapidly. So a few of those are video interviewing, chatbots, resume readers, productivity monitors, keystroke counters, and gamified tests. In addition, there is a very large group of tools that are called wearables. These are AI-driven devices that literally attach to someone's body, and they can perform many different tasks. They're designed to perform many tasks. So some examples of wearables include eye tracking glasses, driver fatigue detectors, posture and limb strength trackers, workplace wellness monitors, movement disorder detectors, and things like social behavior monitoring, for example, monitoring body language and tone of voice. Or there are several devices that use headbands, headsets, or helmets to detect emotion, attention, or mental focus, and they also can perform things like EEGs. So where do we see potential concerns arising about the ADA? We see them arising in three different categories. And because time is very short today, I'm just going to quickly run through those categories. The first, and Nathan brought this up, is the failure to provide reasonable accommodations. There are many different circumstances in which individuals with disabilities may need an accommodation to interact productively with an AI tool. So for example, if an individual with a visual impairment cannot navigate a hiring process because the algorithmic tool is not fully screen readable, they may need an accommodation that would allow them to do so. Or if an individual with limited manual dexterity cannot complete a timed knowledge test that requires the use of a keyboard, even though they're well qualified to do the position, they may need an accommodation to allow them to perform in a way that will be assessed accurately. So we have a number of recommendations, promising practices for employers. As a note, just as I was starting, I put in the chat links to our 2 technical assistance materials that address AI and the Americans with Disabilities Act. One is more or less focused towards employers. The other provides several tips for employees and applicants. So I hope that you will look at those. Those go into much more depth about what I'm discussing today. So what are some promising practices with respect to ensuring that people who need reasonable accommodations when they're interacting with AI tools can get them? First, making sure that job applicants and employees know that reasonable accommodations will be made available. Making sure that HR staff know to recognize requests for reasonable accommodations, and ensuring that alternative test formats, alternative formats for any different kind of processes are available. And of course, those same premises would apply if a third party is undertaking the hiring or the employment task for an employer. The second category of potential ADA violations in employment relates to the ADA's limitations on employers seeking individual information about someone's disabilities or their medical status, medical information. Congress recognized that allowing employers to get this information might subject individuals in the workplace to discrimination on the basis of disability. And that's why these particular 3 provisions I'm going to mention apply not only to people with disabilities, but to everyone in the workplace. So there could be potential concerns if AI tools, for example, make disability-related inquiries. In other words, they ask questions that are likely to elicit information about someone's disability. Or they're also prohibited, and again, this is in most circumstances, there are some exceptions, from collecting information that qualifies as a medical examination under the ADA. And similarly, if employers collect medical information, the ADA requires them to keep it confidential with very limited exceptions. So what are some promising practices for employers so that they can avoid either inadvertently collecting this type of information or failing to respect the ADA's requirements to keep medical information confidential? Some promising practices would be communicating with any vendors who might be selling these tools to ensure that the tools do not ask questions that may elicit information about disability, to ensure that the tools do not engage in medical examinations unless something like a request for a reasonable accommodation has been made. And similarly, ensure that any medical information collected remains confidential and is only used for appropriate purposes according to the ADA. The third category of potential violation is what the ADA calls screen out of a qualified individual with a disability. The ADA prohibits the use of selection criteria that deny employment opportunities to qualified individuals with disabilities, whether the screenouts are intentional or not. For example, if an employer uses a chatbot that is trained to reject applicants with significant employment gaps, individuals who may have such gaps because of their disability may be screened out, even though they're qualified to do the job. Or an individual may have a disability that affects their speech, and a video interviewing tool may rate them poorly because they do not speak as quickly as other candidates, again, even though they're able to do the job. So here too, we have a number of promising practices for employers to reduce the risk of screening out qualified individuals with disabilities. Among those promising practices, it would be helpful to clearly state that reasonable accommodations are available, to give all applicants and employees as much information about the assessment tools as possible in advance of the individual beginning the assessment. We've noted that sometimes people don't know what they're about to be asked to do and may not recognize that they need an accommodation until they're already midway through an assessment, which makes it a little bit more difficult. Further, it's important to make sure that the assessment tools reflect actual essential job qualifications, so that those tools are only measuring qualifications that are truly necessary for the job. And of course, those qualifications should be measured directly, not simply through correlations that may prove to be inaccurate. And employers may wish to directly ask software vendors questions such as whether or not the user interface can effectively interact with people with as many disabilities as possible, and if the materials are available in alternative formats should they be needed. It's important to note that there are occasions when both an employer and an AI vendor may both be responsible under the ADA. So when AI algorithmic decision-making tools are designed or implemented by a vendor and the vendor acts as the employer's agent, the vendor in some circumstances may have the same legal obligations as the employer to job applicants and employees under the ADA. Some quick final notes. I don't want to go too long. First, just to note that the EEOC is very interested and has put a great deal of energy into advancing our work on clarifying not only the ADA implications of AI, but also looking at other equal opportunity laws and the impact that AI has in other protected factors that are covered under those laws. These are just some of the references to some of our initiatives on that front. And finally, I just want to make reference to those two technical assistance materials that appear on this slide with hyperlinks that we can share with you, as well as a very recent settlement just 2 weeks ago that we made with respect to individuals who needed accommodations of effective screen readers to apply for jobs and were not provided those accommodations, as well as a link to our library of disability-related resources, which we welcome you to visit. So thank you again for this opportunity. I'm delighted to answer questions later.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Very appreciated. Now, our next presenter, Josh Mendelson, Acting Chief of the Disability Rights Office at the Federal Communications Commission. Josh, please proceed.
Hello, everyone. I am Josh Mendelson, and I am the Acting Chief of the Disability Rights Office of the Federal Communications Commission. I am a white, bald, middle-aged man with a salt and chili colored beard. I also am wearing a black suit with a green shirt. I would like to thank the Access Board for hosting this hearing today to cover this very important issue. The FCC has have a few ongoing initiatives that have involved the use of artificial intelligence, which has an impact on individuals with people with disabilities. And I would like to talk about three specific areas today. The first being modern communications or access to communications. The second being video programming. And the third being emergency access or emergency access communications. First of all, communication access or modern communications cover a wide range of applications and uses ranging from telephones and telecommunications relay services. This also includes hearing aids, as well as interoperable video conferencing platforms like what we are using right now at this moment. And all of these have been impacted by the recent FCC action involving artificial intelligence, otherwise known as AI. I am going to start by talking about robocalls and robotexts. This is becoming a huge issue with almost everybody who has a cell phone, whether it be a landline or a mobile phone. Many individuals are being deluged by these robocalls and robotext messages. And the FCC is very well aware of this issue. We are also aware of the use of artificial intelligence on the side, or rather by those bad actors who are using AI to send even more robocalls or make them more realistic, and also the use of AI to inhibit or reduce and prevent robocalls and robotexts. In using this technology or using artificial intelligence and robocalls, especially we are concerned most particularly as we have recently been collecting comments and soliciting those comments on the accessibility and taking that into consideration in defining those technologies, particularly on the development of how to avoid discouraging the development of beneficial AI tools to detect and block unwanted and fraudulent calls and text messages. So how can AI be used to improve the ability of people with disabilities to communicate with called parties? Such as the ability to revoke consent to future calls and messages. And to work effectively with telecommunications and relay services, and to generate or translate those messages. We have also been seeking comment on steps that we can take in order to ensure that important accessibility tools, such as voice altering individuals, or rather voice altering technology for individuals with disabilities, are not negatively impacted by our rules, such as the TCPA rules, regulating calls using artificial or pre-recorded voices. We recently, earlier this month, held a vote to adopt an NPRM or further rules, and sought comment on the positive use of AI to improve access to the telephone networks for people with disabilities, especially those individuals who are using artificial or AI generated voices or synthesized voices to make these calls. Another area that we've been looking into and that we have been regulating is telecommunications relay services, which enables people with disabilities, people who are deaf, hard of hearing, or speech disabled, to be able to use the telephone network to make calls to people who are not deaf or hearing on the other end. One example of telecommunications relay services is Internet Protocol Caption Telephone Services, otherwise known as IPCTS, in which a person who is deaf or hard of hearing will be able to speak for themselves, and then the other person on the other end of the line will hear that speech, what the person is saying, and then when they wish to speak back, what they say would then be typed and sent as a text message back to the person who is deaf or hard of hearing. 6 years ago, the FCC ruled that IPCTS could also be provided on a fully automated basis using only ASR, or automatic speech recognition, which we at times have referred to as a type of AI. This has been used to generate captions without the participation of a communications assistant, or otherwise a relay agent, which would serve as an intermediary. Recently, just last month, we adopted a new plan for compensation regarding IPCTS, or rather, IPCTS, IP caption telephone service providers, using different rates. One would be a higher compensation rate for that which used communication-assisted technology or communication-assisted captions, otherwise a human who would be providing the captions, and a lower rate of compensation for ASR-only captions. That way, we sought to reduce the incentive to provide only the lower costing ASR caption service when captions by a human intermediary would be better in some circumstances or preferred by the consumers. Recently, just several months ago, a consortium of consumer groups filed a petition requesting that the FCC initiate a rulemaking to require IPCTS providers using ASR technology to also provide consumers the option to switch to a communications assistant at any point during an IPCTS telephone call. Now, we currently have a number of IPCTS providers, and all of those providers are able to provide IPCTS using ASR, but only a few of those providers also provide the option to switch to a communications assistant. The petition asked, or states rather, that ASR being used as a part of IPCTS frequently misinterprets speech with accents, dialects, or patterns that deviate from standard American English, or when used to recognize speech in environments with background noise. We are currently in the process of soliciting comments and replies, and all of those comments and responses are due, or rather comments, I should say, are due September 3rd, and replies are due September 16th. Another form of telecommunications relay services is known as IP relay, in which a deaf and hard of hearing person or a person with a speech disability would type a message, and then that typed message would be spoken to a person on the other end. Then that person on the other end of the line would be speaking, and what that person speaks would then be transcribed into text, which then I could read as a TRS user or an IP relay user. We currently have 2 applications by current IPCTS providers to also provide IP relay using speech synthesizers and ASR. Another area that's been impacted by AI is interoperable video conferencing systems for video conferencing services, just like this platform, such as Zoom, Teams, WebEx, and other types of platforms. We at the FCC are seeing an increase in the use of AI and ASR on these types of platforms. And the FCC has already ruled that these platforms must be accessible to people with disabilities. So we see AI to be used to generate automated captions, also AI summaries of conversations, and also being used for transcription services. They also can be used to automatically detect and designate signers as speakers. One emerging area that we are seeing the use of AI have an impact on is automated ASL interpreting services, otherwise known as AIS, in which AI is being used to recognize sign language and then translate those signs into speech or text. And the same is true in the other direction. We are seeing speech and text being then translated to American Sign Language or other signs using an avatar or photorealistic personas or figures. We recognize that this holds a lot of promise for the telecommunications relay services landscape and other contexts, and for other contexts as well. The use of AI is also emerging in video programming. The use of audio descriptions, for example, which interprets what's being shown on the screen for those who are blind or have low vision. We are seeing AI being used to generate these types of services and audio descriptions. Now, even though we recognize that there are some complaints regarding the quality of the robotic quality of these audio descriptions and the quality of the speech, ASR is also being used to generate closed captions for video programming, more and more in recent years. However, we're also seeing complaints regarding the dictionaries that are being used by these services. Some are not up to date or do not have the accurate dialect or vocabulary that's necessary for those contexts. Now, there's a lot of promise when it comes to new next generation televisions, or ATSC 3.0, in terms of how AI can be used to generate overlays of information when it comes to signed information or automated sign language or captions, various graphics or interpretations of graphical information on the screen. And I recognize that I'm soon out of time. So I would like to encourage people to visit our website. Our website is www.fcc.gov/accessibility. And there you'll be able to find more information about our recent initiatives involving AI and people with disabilities. The FCC is committed to the use of AI in order to enhance accessibility for people with disabilities in modern communications and video programming, as well as for emergency communications.
Thank you so very much, Josh. Now, in our next presentation, we will hear from Rylene Rogers, Disability Advisor for Microsoft Accessibility on AI and Accessibility at Microsoft. Rylene, you may begin, please.
Thank you so much. I'm Rylene Rogers, the Disability Policy Director at Microsoft. I'm a middle-aged white woman with brown and white hair, wearing a variety of blue patterns today. I'm excited to join this conversation and build on some of the great resources already shared. At Microsoft, we believe accessibility is a fundamental right. It breaks down barriers and opens doors to a more equitable future. We're committed to ensuring that people with disabilities have access to accessible technology. Our approach takes on 4 different areas. We're really interested in the challenges people are facing, and we understand that they are complex and there's no single company or sector that can solve them. So we're committed to working with our global ecosystem of people with disabilities, partners, and customers. We really work together in 4 key areas: developing inclusive technology, working with disabled people as the talent that drives the expertise forward, modernizing public policy to ensure access to the fundamental right of accessibility, and accelerating awareness and connectivity through partnerships. It's key that these pieces work together and are grounded in the needs of disabled people. I want to take a step back to our conversation around AI, because we've spoken a lot about the term and what it means, and the Access Board is responding to the executive order on AI. But holistically, it's important to understand the history and that there are many types of AI that are currently driving accessible features within products and systems. AI has existed since 1956. We've had multiple waves of advancement, from machine learning to deep learning and to our current age of generative AI. I think this is an important point of clarification when we're talking about risk, opportunity, and regulation, to be as inclusive and clear as possible about what the risks are and what types of technology we're targeting. At Microsoft, we have a long history of really thinking about accessible and responsible AI. We're committing to advancing AI through ethical principles, and I think it's important to call out that within those principles, fairness and inclusivity are key components. This has been an ongoing practice for multiple years, and our accessible AI principles are regularly updated and reviewed and used in all of our product development. I encourage everyone to view those principles, guidelines, and toolkits on our transparent website so you can learn more about our approach and consider it. The other part that's helpful is we've taken some of our learning and have been sharing it in terms of a blueprint to governing AI, sharing what's possible and how can we think collectively about ensuring privacy, security, and accessibility in this new world. We find ourselves at this moment of generative AI, which really is proving to be a paradigm-shifting innovation. There's an opportunity to create a more inclusive experience at tremendous scale. Individual assistance can be available to millions of people across the spectrum of disability in ways that hasn't yet been previously available. And there's the potential to transform accessibility as a practice and making design more inclusive. And I think that's a really important place to start. Our partners at GitHub have really been leading the way in terms of using AI in coding modeling. And we've seen 2 massive steps forward in these efforts. One, that it ensures that new code is built accessible by design, as AI can require it and check it going forward. And the other, as it's transformed the access to this practice of coding and other parts of technology development to a wider range of disabled technologists. It's been critical to drive forward the future of innovation. I want to take a minute to talk about what I think is a bit of the elephant in the AI room, and that is the foundational models and the reality that they're built on the world as it exists. I frequently say that the world as it exists is racist, sexist, and ableist. And that really gives us an opportunity to take a moment and think about what that means in terms of the models and how we need to be addressing it now and in the future. We are very clear that data libraries need disability data to empower representation and to protect against ableism. We're also aware that historically, data libraries underrepresent people with disabilities, disability experience, and disability expertise. We've been tackling this in a variety of ways. We have, as previously mentioned, there's quite a lot of learning in the space of translating language access in the space of AI, particularly in a variety of sign language, in an effort to get to more equity in terms of language access for people. We have ongoing research activities at Microsoft and a blog really outlining where we see it as possible and what needs to still be done to make sure that those practices are culturally inclusive and meet the needs of consumers. The other part of the learning is that it's not just about filling and creating new data. It's about making sure that we're testing and modeling and really correcting the current data to prevent harm. This includes a critical need to test for disability bias in all parts of the design process, the need to tune the foundational models to more accurately represent who we all are and how we all interact in the world. And again, that ongoing commitment to filling the data gaps. I'd like to point to one example of that commitment to fill the data gap. It's one of my favorites. It follows so well after our previous speaker because it really is around what is that challenge about getting to accuracy for non-typical speech in AI models. But it's also one of my favorites because it's about partnership. We are going to get to more inclusive data sets faster if we work together. So the Speech Accessibility Project is a project across researchers and all of the major tech companies working with disabled people to gather high quality representative speech samples of non-typical speech. This project has been underway for several years. It has several more years to go, and we're already seeing the results of increased accuracy in the use of AI with speech models. And that's the kind of collaboration that we're going to need to continue for AI to be more representative and for the data to move forward. I also wanted to share a little bit about what we're learning. Copilot is the term that we use to describe our AI that is embedded within Microsoft products. And we're all getting more and more experience with it. If you don't yet have Copilot in a Microsoft product that you're using, we can all try it for free using our Bing Copilot. So that's a great place to start and play with it. A couple of things have already been mentioned about the use cases. But what I find most interesting and really appropriate to the conversations about reasonable accommodations, employment, new access to communities is the way that AI through Copilot is creating an accessible environment, accelerating disability use cases that it was not designed for. So what I'm talking about is many individuals who are living with a wide variety of disabilities are getting access to these tools and coming back to us with stories about how it's changing their communication skills, how it's supporting them during meetings across the spectrum of disability. I've had this personal experience and with lived experience as a dyslexic woman. I am radically benefiting from the ways that Copilot is changing how I can read and produce written material. Similar experiences are being shared for across the neurodiversity spectrum, mobility disabilities, etc. It's a real shift in terms of what is assistive technology What is technology? What is innovation? And it's going to need to be part of the conversation around AI regulation and use, because there's no longer a linear yes, no, this is what we need in terms of an accommodation, but a radical change in how technology works overall. You can see some of that in scenarios that were on the screen here in terms of Copilot. One of my favorite things to do is to maximize the ability to share written information with my partners and colleagues who have intellectual and developmental disabilities. AI, large language models, give us instant access to plain language, easy read of any written document. And those summaries allow for a person with an intellectual disability to ask additional questions of clarification. And that layers of technology that I was referring to earlier in terms of the development really maximizes the access piece, because you don't need to read in a traditional sense to get this information. You could ask the question using voice or another way of inputting to a computer. You could receive the information back with a built-in screen reader through something like Edge and Narrator in Microsoft. Similar products exist across our competitors in Google and Apple. But it's a real change in terms of what interaction looks like, how we can get to equity. And when you think about that in a learning environment and in a workplace environment and in an advocacy environment, it's exciting to think about. So there's ways to move those pieces going forward. We're also, have the opportunity to get to learn about these uses and test them out ourselves. One of the ways we've done that is we're using a partnership with AI and our partners at Be My AI to augment our disability answer desk. Our disability answer desk is a longstanding free service that's available with a variety of ways of interacting, whether it's through asking questions in sign language, in text, and a voice call. But we've added in Be My AI, where individuals can interact with an AI bot, share their screen or share an image of the problem that they're having without talking to a human. And we've seen this first chance, this alternative opportunity as being very successful. About 46% of the issues that people have can be resolved with the AI bot without having to wait for a chance to get human support. And we're also seeing a really significantly higher rate in satisfaction for the ability to do it more independently without needing a sighted volunteer, for example, to help navigate the question. So there's lots of ways to think about and learn together around these types of bots as different parts of government think about how to implement them inclusively and fully. I wanted to take a moment to really talk about the opportunity and the need to pay very close attention in the public policy discussion around accessibility in the world of regulating AI. We're seeing two things happen. One, that too often there is an ongoing challenge in terms of an opportunity that AI creates in terms of accessibility and a risk that it may create in terms of privacy. And the other is the urgency to create regulations and guidelines without being fully inclusive and hearing clearly from the disability community. I've been excited by the approach that we're trying to take, which is that accessibility and the discussion of disability use cases in AI cannot be separate. It should not only exist with our friends on this call and our friends at the Access Board. It has to be part of all conversations around this. So we're seeing back to that sort of conversation around how do we regulate successfully. Just this last month, we put out another public proposal around what are the regulations needed to protect against abuse from AI-generated content. We were very clear that any regulations and protections needed to create an exemption that would be available for consumers who are using AI-generated voice for disability. So how do we, as a society and through the decision process, make sure that we are protecting against deepfakes, but also not eliminating a really important accessible use case? Similarly, we've thought about that in terms of facial recognition. Back to our ethical AI principles, Microsoft updated those several years ago related to what we will sell facial recognition software and ability to do. We will not sell it for things like policing and monitoring because of the ethical misuse and challenges in that space. But we were very clear that we needed to protect the use and safeguard that technology for people with disabilities who would continue to use it to support accessibility and navigation. So things like Be My AI and Seeing AI and navigation support that's really accelerating. And then we've added that to the conversation with agencies thinking about how are you going to be using AI and really thinking about those issues related to how do we incorporate the needs of the disability community and how do we make sure that the data reflects disability holistically when we're thinking about AI as it's related to transportation or any other sector in the government. And I think that's a critical part of the conversation that has to be moved forward. Finally, I wanted to leave us with a bit of a call to action. We are aware that, and for many of us, this is a new and emerging area in the disability community, in government, in all of our various jobs, and it's incredibly important that we're grounded in growing our knowledge base. I will share in the chat some of the key ways that we've created at no cost training and toolkits and guidance, sort of building on the lessons that we're learning as we continue to try to develop accessibly and try to make sure that we are not creating harm, but instead supporting the needs of people with disabilities. We have a great accessible innovation toolkit. Now have launched accessibility fundamentals that include information about designing in terms of AI, and then the accessibility and AI disability, bridging the disability gap, has a lot of information around the challenge of ableism and testing in that space. So thank you so much for this conversation, and I look forward to the questions.
Thank you so very much, Riley. Now, if you please allow me to remind our panelists to keep your presentations around 8 minutes, it would be greatly appreciated. We are going to move now with our next presentation, and we welcome presenters Joe Devon, co-founder of Global Accessibility Awareness Day, GAAD, and Dr. Jennifer Mankoff, founding co-director of UW Create at the University of Washington on Accessibility, AI, and Public Policy. Joe and Jennifer, you may begin, please.
Thank you, Elver, and thanks for the opportunity to speak to this group. So, bias, that is a question that has come up in every single panel on AI that I've been involved in for 15 years. And yet, products come out and disability bias is a problem over and over again. And either AI researchers, they definitely know about it, either they don't care that much, or it's really difficult to make an AI model or AI products that are not biased. So let's try to think of some solutions to inspire AI researchers to care more, but also make it easier to make AI models that are that reduce the bias. And in order to really get that framing different, I think it would be helpful to look at what artificial intelligence really is and how it relates to accessibility and disability. So when you think about it, artificial intelligence is trying to emulate human beings and how we understand sensory input that comes in, our thinking, how we engage in cognitive processing, and how we produce generative output. And what is disability really other than a disruption in understanding sensory input, engaging in cognitive processing, and producing generative output? It really is extremely aligned. And I believe that if we work together with our community and the AI research community, we will wind up with much better AI products and really alleviate the disability bias that we see. And one of the big problems that AI researchers have is that uncanny valley effect, which can only be taken care of if you pay attention to the nuance of human abilities. And the accessibility industry has spent decades studying those minute differences. And my whole idea here is to talk about how this can improve the AI models that are coming out. So about a year ago, we have OpenAI announced ChatGPT went multimodal, but other LLMs have also achieved the same. So it can see, hear, and speak. And when you think about seeing, you're talking about visual recognition. And if you are an AI researcher and you're working on visual recognition and you're working with a general population, you can make quite a good model. But imagine if you focus on perhaps the edge cases is a good way to think of it. People, for example, that have never seen in their entire life, they've been blind since birth, and you're trying to describe to them what is the color red. That's extremely hard to do if you've never seen a color in your life. But if you're able to do that, you're going to have a tremendous model. By the same token, if you are autistic, you may struggle to see the emotions of human beings as they're talking to you. And I've heard that there's a product being worked on that is trying to detect and in subtle ways share with people who are autistic what the emotions are. And if you can focus on those aspects of the differences in humanity, you're going to create amazing AI models. Similarly, we were talking about automated speech recognition or ASR. If you're trying to create subtitles for people, and here I have an image on the left of Leonardo DiCaprio trying to sell a pen, and that's sell with an S, or on the other side, you've got a smartphone and it says sell with a C. If you're dealing with a general population and you make the mistake of sharing the word sell with a C, then it's not a big deal. But if you're dealing with someone who's been deaf since birth, this is called a homophone, words that are that look different but sound the same. But you'll have no idea if you're deaf that sell with a C sounds similar to sell with an S, or sounds the same really. And so if you focus on the disability population, again, you're going to have much better models. Now, when you're building AI models, it really lives and breathes data. And one of the reasons that we're struggling so much with making products that are great for people with disabilities is a lack of data. And I was super excited to hear that Zach is working on this, as well as Rylan on some of the Microsoft work. Because one of my favorite products is the coding copilots, and there's a variety of them out there. And there's also, if you speak to an LLM and ask it to code, it will give you code, but unless you specifically say that you want it to be accessible, you're going to have issues because by default, it is not accessible. And as Zach said, the reason for that is that the data sets like Codex, is a popular data set. They tend to be based on open source code bases that are not accessible. And so we need to create data sets that are accessible. And it's really important for this to be open source so that anybody building an AI model will do it correctly. Another aspect that would be very helpful for us to work on are benchmarks and evals. As you can see, here's a screenshot of a company that is, an AI company announcing how well they're doing in different benchmarks. So if you see that your LLM is able to pass the medical boards, the LSATs, it can compete with doctors and lawyers, that's a great thing for the marketing departments to share. But why don't we have any popular benchmarks for accessibility, for disability-related topics? This is something that would be super helpful because now we're going to see that the big AI companies are going to compete on how well they handle disability data and how accessible they are. And it's wonderful to see, for example, Rylan shared the Microsoft work, and I've been aware that there are some of these big tech companies are working together with nonprofits, but I really think that there's a limitation on the private angle of creating some of this data where we should really bring it to a public funding where we can enforce certain things like making sure that all the data is open source, making sure that the people that provided the data are paid properly, and the usage of the data is handled fairly. And this is something that my collaborator here, Dr. Mankoff, has done a fair bit of work with. So I'm going to hand it to her from here. Jennifer?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jen Mankoff. I'm a white woman wearing a brown shirt with dark, curly, partly gray hair. Use she, her pronouns. And I'm here just to summarize a little bit of the work on best practices for disability data collection and benchmarks. And this is actually excerpted. This first one is accepted from a report by the Center for Democracy and Technology, which is one of the groups that has an MOU with the Access Board. So I don't want to take credit for this, but just wanted to summarize this and sort of throw in a few extra things about how important it is from a disability perspective to make sure that when we collect demographic data, we're reflecting modern concepts of what disability is, that we are including people with disabilities in all aspects of data collection and also doing it in a way that includes other forms of diversity at the same time, because people with disabilities exist in all spheres. And do it in a way that is also accessible to individuals with disabilities. And I'm just trying to be quick here because I know we're behind, so I'm going to move on to benchmarks now and just say that when it comes to benchmarks, the first step is really to develop metrics so that we can characterize dataset diversity, standards for identifying dataset quality, risks and harms, those kinds of things. And there is one particular study that I'm drawing from here. It was a review of standards for inclusive health data sets in Nature 2023 by Aurora et al. And they actually also talked to people about concerns that they had around benchmarks and found that there were some concerns about imposing strict, meaning inflexible diversity requirements around cost and how it might stifle innovation in early phase work. But at the same time, there were some really great pieces of advice on across the review study that they did, where they again looked at lots of different papers on benchmarks and found that better guidance for how to adhere to standards, guidance for engagements with stakeholders, guidance for what those standards should be, for provision of validation data sets, and information about resources such as time and cost were all of great value in helping to establish benchmarks and goals that should be met on those benchmarks. So all of this is really, in brief, is to say that collecting data, developing metrics, and developing guidelines is going to be essential to helping us establish what models meet the goals that we need to meet in order to have inclusive and equitable and fair data sets. And there's a lot of research that needs to be done here, and a lot of things that we could probably get started on more quickly. And we're just hoping to see that become part of the planning around AI and accessibility. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe and Jennifer. Now we are going to welcome Daniel Xie, if I pronounce that correctly, Associate Deputy Director of the Office of Civil Rights, Health and Human Services. Daniel, you may begin, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dan Che, and that is correct how you pronounce my name. I am a middle-aged Asian male. I'm wearing a blue suit with a blue shirt and a yellow tie, and my pronouns are he and him. So for those of you who may not know, OCR is a law enforcement agency that enforces the nation's civil rights and privacy laws in healthcare. And we do this through a number of ways, including rulemaking, policy, and investigations. As a federal regulator and enforcement agency that operates nationwide, we feel that OCR has a unique perspective to bring on artificial intelligence. As some of you may have seen, this past spring, our office rolled out two critical final rules. These are the implementing regulations for underlying statutes, which protect the civil rights of people with disabilities and healthcare and human service programs. Those final rules are for the Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act rule and Section 1557 of the Affordable Care Act. Both of these rules protect people with disabilities from the discriminatory use of algorithms and AI, among other things. They seek to enable cooperation between medical professionals and AI specialists to ensure that they are used safely and effectively. So first, let me just talk about Section 504. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act was passed into law in 1973, and there have been previous implementing regulations. And what it does is it prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability in programs and activities that receive federal financial assistance. But because those regulations have not been updated in some time, this past spring, we issued a new final rule, which would bring these regulations into alignment with current case law and developments in this field. We feel that this final rule is something we're very proud of, and it advances equity and bolsters protections for people with disabilities in a number of ways, including in discrimination with regard to algorithms or AI. And I want to talk about two of those ways for 504. The first is in value assessment tools. Value assessment tools are tools that use patient information like age, health conditions, and other factors to estimate the benefits of specific healthcare decisions. They often involve using algorithms. This final rule makes clear these algorithms cannot be used to discriminate on the basis of disability. Specifically, what these tools are used for is to inform the dollar value or the added value of providing a particular health service or care to inform those care decisions, including whether or not to provide a service or how to provide the service. We note, however, that these tools can lead to discrimination against individuals with disabilities when they place a lower value on life extension used to limit or deny access to aids, benefits, or services. For example, if there are two patients who have nearly identical characteristics, but one has Alzheimer's disease, a value assessment tool may assign a lower value to the patient with Alzheimer's because it considers people with Alzheimer's to have a lower quality of life. A provider that uses this tool to then deny a ventilator to the patient with Alzheimer's would likely violate Section 504. What recipients instead should do is they should rely on value assessments to assign the same value for extending the lives of people with disabilities as those without. A second area that 504 touches on is in child welfare. As we saw in one of the earlier presentations that was excellent covering this subject, we see increasing discrimination in AI in this area of child welfare. And we understand and laud that preventing child abuse is a vital and necessary function of government. But even there, it is imperative that this tool be, this goal, I should say, be pursued in a non-discriminatory way. And that's why OCR is taking action against algorithms that may discriminate against parents with disabilities in these investigations. It is simply unacceptable to subject parents to greater scrutiny simply because of their disability. And so because of this, I'm really pleased to share that the new Section 504 rule makes clear that disability discrimination applies to the child welfare system, including decisions related to whether a child is removed from, placed with, unified, or permitted to visit their parent with a disability. The second rule I want to talk about is Section 1557. So for those who don't know, it is the primary non-discrimination provision of the Affordable Care Act, and it prohibits not only disability discrimination, but discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, sex, and age. And unlike Section 504, Section 1557 is specific to the context of health programs and activities, but the added reach is that it covers health insurance, which Section 504 generally does not reach. And so under our new rule, recipients of HHS funding cannot discriminate against any individual through the use of what we have termed patient care decision support tools, but that can include AI, clinical algorithms, flowcharts, eligibility tools, risk prediction models, and more. What these tools do is they help medical professionals make critical health decisions by using specific symptoms, test results, or other medical information as inputs for these algorithms. And again, like everyone has already said on this call, we recognize the promise of these tools to not only reduce health disparities, but to increase access to care. But we really also want to ensure that providers use these tools responsibly in order to deliver on these promises. Developers of these tools have a responsibility to know what the intended use of their tool looks like and to properly communicate risks to end users. And so, the rule is on the portal. Folks can look it up. It's section 5057 final rule, and it has the provisions there as well. So I'm going to wrap up. I think we're at time. I'm going to wrap up a little bit early, but OCR is here as a law enforcement agency. You can file complaints with us on our portal. Just Google HHS OCR, and you can find the portal right there, and we can conduct investigations. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so very much, Daniel. And now we are going to move on with our last presentation. And we are going to do that with Dr. Jura Treveranus, Director and Professor, Inclusive Design Research Center, Chairperson, Accessible and Equitable Artificial Intelligence Systems, Accessibility Standards Canada on Countering Digital Eugenics. Dr. Treveranus, you may begin, please.
And thank you for this opportunity to address this critical topic. I'm an older white woman with gray hair and glasses, and I've called my presentation Countering Digital Eugenics. And apologies because we are running a bit late. I'm going to skip over a few of the slides very quickly. But I want to explain why, when people are the subjects of AI decisions, the current design of AI is poised to make every human harm even worse for people who are already vulnerable and every benefit better for people who are already doing well. In that sense, it is like a magnifying mirror of our current society, exaggerating existing patterns of disparity. Let me explain. As with all disruptive technologies, if you have a disability, the opportunities and risks of the disruption are at the extremes. This is especially the case with AI. The other speakers have covered some of the extreme opportunities. I want to discuss a frequently pervasive, ignored risk, especially since the extreme opportunities of AI for disabled people is often used to justify the risks. At its most basic, AI is a powerful statistical reasoning machine feeding on available data. Artificial intelligence can be seen as a power tool, like moving from a hammer and a chisel to a powerful motor. It can do the things that we have done before, but more accurately, consistently, and efficiently. AI is amazing at statistically finding or producing the typical, popular, normative, predictable, and statistical average. And I'm not going to tell you about the 3 generations of AI, but largely to say that we still have control of AI. We are telling the AI what to do and how to act. And to understand my concern, we need to understand the data patterns that AI is amplifying, accelerating, and automating. Relevant to this hearing, what is the relationship between disability and data? Over my 44 years in the field, I've been collecting data. I've been asking everyone, what do you need to thrive and participate in society? Because this data set is so diverse and multifaceted, when I plot this data, it looks like a starburst. I've called this the human starburst. It is the pattern Pareto noticed when he developed the 80-20 rule. 80% of the needs are clustered in the middle 20% of the space, and the remaining 20% are distributed in the periphery in the remaining 80% of the space. The needs related to disability are scattered out at the jagged edges of the starburst. The needs in the middle are close together, meaning they are more alike. The needs at the periphery are further apart, meaning they are more different from each other. This supports the statement that if you know one person with a disability, you know one person with a disability. Because of economies of scale and conventions like the 80-20 rule that say to ignore the difficult 20% that take 80% of the effort, almost anything that is designed works for the middle is difficult as you deviate from the middle and doesn't work for you if you're out at that jagged edge. And the design of AI ecosystem is no different. It is optimized to serve the middle of the bullseye. As with all statistical reasoning, artificial intelligence, like statistically determined predictions, are accurate in the middle, inaccurate as you move from the middle, and wrong as you get to the edge. Disability is at that jagged edge. AI is simply amplifying, automating, and accelerating a pattern that already ripples through every aspect of our lives, creating greater and greater disparity. And I won't list all of the ways in which this is doing. And so we call this statistical discrimination. As AI gets better and more powerful, it is propagating past discrimination faster, more efficiently, and more accurately. It is hyper-driving what we call statistical discrimination. Even in the miraculous life-changing assistive technologies, the further your data is from the average, and the more you need the life-changing tools, the less likely the AI assistive technology will work for you. Bias toward the optimal pattern means bias against different. Disability means difference, different ways of doing a job, different digital traces, different work and education history, different social media topics, an entangled profile of many differences. Assuming that what we know about the majority applies to the minority does harm. And what we've seen is that in harm and incident databases, it has become a very depressing exercise, and I told you so. We've heard a few of the issues, but I'm going to skip over many of them and tell you that even when we are looking at medical calculators and triage tools, we're seeing an uptick in iatrogenic death and illness because the determination of the health intervention that you require is based on the average. And as we know, determinations regarding the average are wrong or inaccurate as you get out to that edge. AI, at its most subtle, is a seductive digital eugenics machine, satisfying the hunger for normality, stability, and predictability in a chaotic and unpredictable world. Think of all the youth that just want to fit in. It is homogenizing toward a monoculture. And my current concern, and this is what I want to stress, is with the misleading impression given by the quickly emerging AI ethics industry, which promise to remove bias, reduce risks, prevent harms, and certify AI applications as ethical. The tools and measures use statistical reasoning so that the harms to people that are outliers in the data will be viewed as insignificant when determining impact, invisible in error testing, and merely anecdotal in risk-benefit analysis. The measures needed to remove discrimination requires more than addressing data gaps or data bias or filling the data desert. It requires more than removing human bias from algorithms or removing stereotypes from labels and proxies or excising markers of disability to avoid discrimination, as has been recommended to achieve equity in hiring. Even with full proportional representation, the AI decision system will still decide against difference or the outlier in the data. And what can be done? Amongst the things, we can create tools that prevent harm, that tell you when AI is an inappropriate tool to use with the individual in front of you. We can invert the dominant algorithm to favor difference rather than the average or the typical. We can flip the perspective so that we pay attention to the novel and unique. We can push benefits to where they're needed the most. And in Canada at the moment, we're filling the regulatory vacuum with an accessible and equitable AI standard for the Accessible Canada Act. Specific to disability, we are addressing Nothing Without Us, and we are addressing statistical discrimination, cumulative harm, and education, and thereby reflecting the essential value of difference in countering digital eugenics.
Thank you, Dr. Tremus, and I want to thank all our presenters. Your informative present appreciated. Unfortunately, due to the time constraints, we are not going to have time for our Q&A session, so apologies to our as board members, but if you please send your questions and comments to the staff. Therefore, we are going to move into the public comment portion of the hearing, which is to hear from the public on the intersection of disability and artificial intelligence. Each pre-registered speaker will have only 2 minutes. Amy Nieves, Public Affairs Specialist, will call on the speakers by name and assist with unmuting as needed. Dear Amy, would you please call the first speaker, registered speaker? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have Elizabeth Barker. Elizabeth Barker.
Hi.
You may be.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you can begin.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Access Board, for the opportunity to speak. I am Elizabeth Barker. I am a Senior Technical Assistant and Product Director at CAST. I am a white woman with brown hair wearing a black shirt. My pronouns are she, her. At CAST, we lead and inspire and convene a global community to design equitable, inclusive learning experiences through a universal design for learning framework. As you know, UDL is incorporated in the federal K-16 education, career training, and workforce laws. To support Access Board's AI initiative, CAST would like to make the following recommendations. AI to be accessible for all. To achieve, the Access Board must continue to push for federal agencies to meet all the compliance requirements under Section 508. Clarify the federally recognized UDL framework guidelines will strengthen the compliance with Section 508 and AI procurement, design, implementation. Reinforce that AI must be interoperable with accessibility features built into platforms. As well as we would and feel it is imperative that agencies know that the AI systems that are born with accessibility. Additional AI systems must be diverse in data and protect data privacy. There are also 3 requirements that we are hoping for. For the diverse data and training of the AI, specify the agencies must consider risk and work to prevent biases in output, and ensure the agencies keep humans in the loop for planning. The potential for AI to support education, career, and opportunity training is still being discovered. However, AI is huge potential for supporting flexible, personalizing learning for all. To support these recommendations, CAST will submit a written comments by August 31st deadline. Thank you for the opportunity to meet, and I apologize for my quick speaking, but I hope I make the 2 minutes. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. At this time, we're going to call the next speaker, which is Glenda Sims. Glenda, you may begin when ready. Glenda, can you unmute?
Yes, I was looking to see if I could start my video. Can you hear me?
Yes, you may begin.
Wonderful. Glenda Sims, Chief Info Officer at Accessibility. AI is advancing at an incredible rate, unlocking the ability for computers to understand nuanced context in language and visuals and solve intricate problems. As a force for good, AI now has the potential to eliminate many digital accessibility barriers for people with disabilities. However, AI can make mistakes, which can have an outsized negative impact for people with disabilities. Poorly designed AI can introduce accessibility issues during software development, mislead disabled end users, and even put a person's life in peril. As I've learned from Utah, for example, research in ableist bias in pedestrian detection showed an autonomous vehicle not only failing to recognize a person in a wheelchair, but actually instructing the car to drive into that person. The serious consequences of AI must be mitigated. AI systems are generally trained on massive amounts of data, often without vetting for accessibility issues or biases. Therefore, we believe using out-of-the-box AI systems, particularly LLMs, is dangerous for accessibility. Instead, AI must be used ethically to move accessibility forward by following 4 principles: robust accessibility savvy data that must be vetted by human experts to be free from accessibility issues and free from bias against disability. 2, human-centric design. Humans must remain in the loop. We must make accessibility easier while also allowing a human to step in with better judgment. 3, transparency. Systems must be transparent about when and how AI has been used. And 4, without a doubt, inclusion. People with disabilities must be involved in every phase of AI adoption, from ideation to design to development to testing. Today, we have the opportunity of a lifetime. Let's use the power of AI to do everything we can teach it to do. And with this together, we can truly make digital equality a reality. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker that I see listed is Michael Bevel from Test Party. Michael, you may unmute and begin.
Hey there, everyone. This is Michael Bevel from Test Party. It's great to meet you all. I'm very new to the digital accessibility space, but my training before accessibility was in philosophy and computer science. And I started my career writing papers about privacy and GDPR and how that relates to human rights and ethics. So now working in the disability space, I noticed a lot of changes that are very similar to what we saw in the privacy, GDPR, and cookie world. One of which is the prevalence of AI as a potential solution, but I do want to frame it as a tool and not a panacea. And something that we've been seeing a lot in the market is a lot of these AI tools claiming to do too much. What we believe here at Test Party, and I think what I encourage everyone in the AI industry as it relates to disability to really think through, is how you can use AI tools as an augmentation to existing manual efforts, manual services, and manual remediation, especially as it relates to online accessibility and digital accessibility. You know, when we think through AI and the future of it as it relates to accessibility, we think through 3 major methods. How can you use AI in testing to create guardrails and frameworks that lift up the least common denominator? How do you ensure that, you know, there is a baseline of some sort of standards through AI testing? Second, we think through remediation. What can we be doing to at least provide suggestions and learning in context? Accessibility is contextual, and artificial intelligence, being able to digest data, is also contextual. And third, we ask the question, how can we use AI to improve empathy, to create deeper understanding of different user journeys? So these are all things that we're very excited to share, and I'm always available for you to reach out to me online after this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next speaker is Elise Racine. If you can unmute and begin. Elise? Elise, if you can unmute, please.
Hi, yes, sorry.
There you go. Go ahead.
Oh, perfect. Can you see my video?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Elise Racine, an AI practitioner with the University of Oxford and social justice advocate. Today, I'll be discussing participatory accountability and reparative mechanisms for more inclusive, equitable AI. While AI has immense potential, it also poses significant risks, particularly for marginalized communities, including people with disabilities. AI systems can perpetuate biases, exacerbate inequities, and even cause harm if not designed and deployed thoughtfully. Algorithmic impact assessments identify and evaluate the potential societal impacts of an AI system before implementation. When designed with diversity and accessibility in mind, they can foster inclusion, accountability, transparency, trust, and ultimately equity. However, for these assessments to be truly effective, they must incorporate diverse perspectives. The key is meaningful, active engagement that goes beyond tokenism, where lived experiences directly inform AI design, development, and deployment. Algorithmic reparations offer further guidance on how to not only meaningfully engage members of the disability community, but also actively prevent and work to undo harms in AI systems. They recognize the historical and ongoing injustices that shape our technological landscape and seek to rectify them. As we move forward, I urge the Access Board to consider how algorithmic impact assessments and reparations can be integrated in AI policies and practices. This could involve 1, developing a disability-oriented algorithmic impact assessment toolkit that addresses specific needs and concerns of the disability community. 2, creating platforms that foster ongoing dialogues among AI practitioners, disability advocates, researchers, ethicists, and other community stakeholders. 3, implementing inclusive reparative data collection methods to address underrepresentation of diverse disability experiences and correct historical exclusion. To achieve AI equity, access, and inclusion, it's imperative we center the voices of the disability community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. At this time, the next speaker is Irene Gaither. Irene, you may unmute and begin. Irene?
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
I am a Asian American. I have a black hair and I have a speech problem since I was a kid. And I want to say this is very important to all of our students and a way of accessible. Thank goodness for all this pandemic and we are able to have captioning while I'm in the meeting on the Zoom. And this is very important to my student as well. I'm a teacher. I am teaching math. So in math, I don't need to talk much. I just write it on the board and student understood it, the step by step that I wrote. So I feel that was a privilege that I was able to work in the sense that I don't talk much or speak up much. And this group, that I'm at Maricopa, they call it the Ability and Affinity Group, is really give me the opportunity to come here and speak on myself this, because to me, it's not a person that are disabled because of speech and they didn't get hired. I went to all the speech therapy. They do have accent. And I will say to my student, you do not need to read my lips because I am not an English teacher. I'm a math teacher. So, but my Native American student, the Native American, the Navajo, the Yaqui, all those are successful and do their homework with me. So I was amazed. They're successful. And I said, Mrs. Gaither was good. She doesn't talk too much, but she drew down in the business right away. So I am feeling very grateful for that from the bottom of my heart that my student, the Native American, appreciate what I did. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Irene. We're going to take our final public commenter that is on the line live, which is Gemma. Gemma, last name E-T-I-C-A-S. Can unmute and begin. Gemma? Gemma, if you're able to unmute, go ahead.
Now I am. Thanks. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Gemma Galdon Clavel. I'm a white Hispanic woman wearing glasses and a black top. I just wanted to share with you some of our work on auditing AI systems with the disability community. At the Ethicus Foundation, we reverse engineer AI systems that impact on vulnerable communities. And last year, we were approached by the disability community and specifically people with Down syndrome because they found an insurance system that would give prices based on people's faces. So it would use facial recognition to assess someone's health and the cost of insurance. Then we worked with them to reverse engineer this system that we did not have access to. And the results were really, really alarming. There's been a lot said about how facial recognition discriminates non-white people and women, but we found gender discrimination among the Down syndrome community. We also found a huge inability to correctly assess age. And so women with Down syndrome were being infantilized, and men with Down syndrome were being made older systematically by those systems. And so we are concerned about the lack of ability for monitoring how these systems are impacting on these communities, and saying very clearly that a system that fails the Down syndrome community systematically should probably not be used for things like assessing how much you should pay for health insurance or what the state of your health is. So we'd like to call for more audits and inspections of the systems that are already live. That are capturing the data of people with disabilities and making decisions that limit their access to physical facilities, to online facilities, and to services and possibilities because of them being outliers. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. At this time, we're going to move to the closing remarks as we are out of time. So I'm going to pass it to Allison Levy.
Thank you so much. I just want to take a very quick second to say thank you to all of those who presented during today's session, as well as those who made public comments. This is a reminder that you may submit written comments till the end of this month, and I do encourage you to visit our Access Board website for more information about our efforts to support artificial intelligence. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you. This concludes the hearing. David, you can close the room. Thank you.